Welcome back to Fat Dads. Today on the show, we are talking about the latest Ryan Reynolds vehicle where he is making jokes, doing cracks, doing stunts, doing action. So basically, your average Ryan Reynolds movie. This one is actually called Free Guy.
That's right. We have the best and worst of this film. We talk about a couple reviews, maybe a little bit sketchy, a little bit questionable.
We talk about gun violence, we're going to talk about intertextuality, and how relevant this film is going to be in 10 years. All this and more on this episode of The Fat Dads.
Ladies and gentlemen, The Fat Dads Podcast.
Welcome to the Fat Dad Podcast. I'm joined once again by my co-host, Nathaniel Snyder, and I'm Seth Webb. Hi, Nathaniel.
Hey, Seth.
Today we are looking at the film Free Guy, starring Ryan Reynolds. It was released this year. It was delayed due to the pandemic. Nathaniel, what are your thoughts on Free Guy?
So going spoiler-free, just right off the top of the bat, I think Free Guy is a whole lot of fun and is definitely a breath of fresh air compared to a lot of self-serious films that have come out, recently that kind of fit the typical mold of the blockbuster type thing, whether it's Kong versus Godzilla or The Suicide Squad or Black Widow, just movies that just take themselves very seriously. This one I feel like has a lot of those blockbuster elements, but it's just a lot more fun.
Yeah, right. And so when it came out this year, the pandemic was still kind of going. I don't think it got like a full theater, like all of the spot ads and a lot of the push to make it to the theaters that other movies like Spider-Man got. So do you think that it would have been largely successful if it got a blockbuster release?
No, I mean, I think the movie was actually pretty successful just looking at the numbers. So
was it? Okay.
Yeah, it made over 3 times its budget, which is definitely the target for making money. So this movie's definitely in the black.
Okay.
So there's no doubt to me that it would have made more money during a non-pandemic year.
Sure.
But in my opinion, I think there's been a lot of people who have come out and have cited every single movie's failure at the box office just to pandemic woes. But I think with Free Guy, something like Free Guy and something like, Spider-Man have shown that, maybe they're just tired of certain movies. I also think that there's, there is the case to be made that maybe some of the older folks have stayed home a little bit. So, right, if you have an R-rated film, people who might have been, kind of that audience have decided to stay home, whereas young people are more out there ready to see movies because they feel more confident in their health or whatever the case may be. So,
sure.
So I think there is an argument to say that, look, some of these more grittier, angrier movies are, right. A lot has been said about the last Duel, the Ridley Scott's movie. I don't know if you're familiar with that one or not.
No, I'm not.
I won't get into it too much, but it's a heavy R-rated film about, it's about violence in, like this 1590s or something like that. It's the last duel that ever happened in.
Wait, was this the one with
It's got
Mark Wahlberg?
No, it has Matt Damon in it.
Matt
Affleck.
Damon, that's his name. Yes, it was the medieval film.
Yeah, exactly.
I saw a couple trailers for that. Yeah, okay.
So that movie's incredibly dark. Incredibly, it has lots of violence and sexual violence as well. And the director Ridley Scott comes out and he blames people who are on their phones for not going to see the movie. And I'm going, why would you want to go see that movie, especially in the middle of a pandemic where everything is just it's dark and depressing? So it's no surprise that people went to go see Free Guy, went to go see Spider-Man, and didn't go are rejecting some of these very serious, very dark films.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to say with like the science of who wants to go see films. And man, a darker film like that is definitely it has to have the right audience. And you're right in thinking that I think most of that audience probably just wants to stay home. That's a movie I would expect to see on like HBO Max or something like that.
Right.
Like most people who are going out or taking their kid to see something, going with a family, group of teenagers, that isn't going to appeal to everybody in a group of teenagers who are going to go. Right. And so, yeah, I could definitely see Free Guy, who has a much brighter vibe. It's happier, it's more easygoing, it's funny, it's actiony. It hits a lot of popular points for being popular. So
Right.
no surprise there, and it's well executed.
Yeah, and that's exactly, and we'll get into it. So with Free Guy, right, the one thing that I think stands in its way from being just like an instant recommendation for me is the fact that there's a lot of swearing in the movie.
It didn't have to be. That was kind of something that was a little bit weird. They could have done it could have made it PG-13.
Yeah, it feels like it's Deadpool light, like Ryan Reynolds came in and like, oh, I want to use all these bad words and say these jokes, like, oh, let's make this PG-13 and just let's push that to the max limit in terms of the language. Not that there's a lot of crass jokes in the movie, because there really aren't.
You get one F-bomb.
Yeah, well, right. but even the F-bomb in the movie is so ridiculous. Like, he says it to his fish, I want to say, like, just have a bleeping good day. Anyway, and it does feel out of place. Like, I don't think that this movie was the movie that needed to be that type of edgy.
I mean, if they made, but they made 3 times the amount that they needed, I guess. So, what do we know, Nathaniel?
Yeah. Well, so, but certainly the movie, I think, hits the right chords. Aside from that, and so for me, I'm in for a recommendation as long as you know that there's definitely a bit of swearing. What's your take on that recommendation?
Yeah. It's I would describe it as a comic booky superhero vibe version of Ex Machina.
Okay.
I don't know. Did you like Ex Machina?
I passed on that.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
I bet I would like it, but
you probably would.
Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely a much more serious movie, like a very different movie from Free Guy. Definitely.
Oh yeah. So I think there's some themes there from Ex Machina that I'm referring to, but completely different film.
This movie definitely has elements of kind of like Ready Player One. It's got elements
that I haven't seen that yet.
I haven't seen either. I've read the book, and seeing the promotional stuff for the movie makes me think that I'm not that interested in seeing Ready Player One.
That makes me think of Spielberg, which this is kind of a rabbit hole. But did you see West Side? Was bombed at the box office.
Yeah. Talk about nobody wanted to see that movie.
West Side, you know how Daniel does theater at Rock Valley?
Yeah.
So they did West Side 2 years ago. And I feel like it's just like a story that everybody knows so well. Mm-hmm. No one really cares no one cares. Like, we all know what happens. Yeah. Why is Spielberg's version of it going to be so much more like better than what like the old film looks really good.
Yeah, it's hard to say if somebody is going, hey, look, I see The Greatest Showman, the success that they have. I see how much the play version on Disney Plus did with Hamilton. Yeah, and I know they're coming out with a cinematic version of Hamilton.
Oh no!
So you're like, hey, look, there's money to be made here.
Yeah.
It's Spielberg. He's probably passionate about this, which is the reason he's doing it. But clearly, not that many other people were passionate. And there was another one previously, as long as we're talking about musicals, In the Heights, that also came out. Right. That also bombed earlier this year as well. So yeah, it did. It bombed pretty heavily.
Oh, interesting.
So it's hard to. I tell you what, marketing is a tough thing.
I know. Well, okay. Here's another theater movie. Dear Evan Hansen.
Yeah.
That came out recently, didn't it?
And that was a huge bomb.
I didn't even know that it was going to come out until, like, I just saw a random trailer for it on YouTube, and I was like, wait, is this out? And I was doing Christmas shopping, and I saw it on the shelf, and it's like, where has this movie been?
Was that a $5 movie?
No. I think it was at least $20, because I think it was a recent release. It will be $5 in another year, I guarantee it. But I did watch the trailer for that, and I was like, oh, that looks bad. Because I got to see Dear Evan Hansen in, like, on a set, like live in Chicago, and it was very good. Yeah, but it needs to be a theater production. I was looking at the trailer and I was like, this is not going to be good in any way. It looked so bad. So, anyways, back to Free Guy. Back to Free Guy.
All right, so you're not as keen on it, right?
Right. So, for whatever reason, as I recall the movie, I just don't remember being that enthusiastic by the time it was done. Like, oh yeah, this is a great film. It was just like, yeah, it's good. It's good. Mm-hmm. I would give it the recommendation too. Yeah, go ahead and see it. But something about the ending, overall, it was just kind of a Ryan Reynolds-y, lighthearted action flick that there are quite a few of. Yeah, it was a little bit better than What's another movie that comes to mind? I can't the movies that I'm thinking of are like a Dwayne Johnson, like a Jumanji.
Or
It's
like
a little bit better than Jumanji.
And it definitely just look, I haven't seen this yet, and I want to, but it looks a lot like Red Notice, right? With Ryan Reynolds and Dwayne Johnson. It has that type of vibe to it, which, right, it's nice to see that those movies are still being made, although I heard Red Notice was not that good, but we'll see.
Yeah, that looks a little bit worse.
Yeah.
Not as lighthearted. But yeah, all right, let's go ahead and get into it.
All right, okay. So let's go into our spoiler discussion, and we're definitely going to get into the plotting a little bit, because I think the plotting is really good. Like when I was watching this movie, I was just impressed with how well designed the plot was. I always. Now, I don't think the movie's perfect by any stretch of the. I don't think it's like it's a masterpiece. I don't think it's like Nolan or like a Spielberg at his best or
That's
Scorsese.
part of the beauty. It doesn't try to be.
Yeah, and I think that's right.
Yeah.
But I think the design of the story is really smart. And like one of the things that we'll get into, like, well, I guess we could jump into like the ending right now, where they set up the romance between Guy and Millie's character, who's the person who designed part of the game. And when that romance is kind of happening, they're getting ice cream and stuff like that, I'm like, how is this gonna go? Like, she's falling in love with an artificial intelligence,
Right.
and my fear was that they can't solve this, right? There's no way that they're going to be able to make it come back around and have her in love with an artificial intelligence while also reconciling in real life. And they really pulled that out at the very end. And I was very satisfied with how that went.
Really?
Yeah, because right, it had this feedback loop where something that started in the real world was placed, like a bomb, so to speak. It was placed in the digital world,
Right.
by Millie's partner. So he designs this
Keys.
program.
Yep.
Keys, yeah, thank you. So he designs the program as kind of his expression of his love for her, right? Then,
But wasn't like the character of Guy, he wrote to be Millie, right? That's kind of what it was set up to be when that all kind of breaks down, was that he designed Guy to be Millie. So that's why he likes so many of the things that she likes.
Right.
So isn't it kind of weird that Millie falls in love with herself in a Loki-esque fashion?
well said. I don't know about that. I think if you meet somebody who has a lot of a lot of things, who likes a lot of things that you like, there's no doubt you're going to hit it off. And certainly Ryan Reynolds, very good looking man, very charming, and he also has that innocence factor as well. And what are you disagreeing with me on? That he's charming, witty, or not that handsome?
I thought it was just kind of weird when she was online falling in love with this artificial intelligence online, and she turns around and the dude who's like, "Hey, I designed him," and she's like, "Well, then I'm in love with you."
I thought though that Guy had a good explanation. He was like, "Hey, look, this was designed by Keys as a way, kind of his love letter, to you,
Right.
And
Okay. Yeah.
and." Get back in the real world, right? There's love in the real world. It doesn't exist in this digital space, even if with an artificial intelligence. And so I liked how it went from real life, back, into digital, then back through real life. And so I thought that was a nice arc that I wasn't expecting. And although they did telegraph that he liked her, and I'm like, she is super thick here. Super thick. So aside from that, I was like, yeah, this really works for me. This is a really good love story, I thought, well told. I don't know. I was really, really impressed with it. Not that I think it's a masterpiece, but because it's not, the movie's not a romance, but that romance, the romantic arc to it was really good.
Okay. I suppose I'm still having a little bit of trouble where there was just like this tiny little jump they made where it seemed like Millie actually liked the artificial intelligence Guy.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah.
I missed the disconnect where she switches back to Keys, and like, because it kind of set this whole romance up for her and Guy, and then we didn't really get much of the romance between her and Keys that kind of resolves in the end.
That's because she's having that romance with Guy.
Right.
And so it gives her the opportunity to have a fresh perspective Right, she everything that you kind of see this in the beginning of the movie, that she's not impressed with Keyes, right? She thinks
Yeah.
he kind of gave up on his values a little bit,
Yeah.
and so she looks at him in a light that cannot be changed, right? And you've heard this too, that when you meet somebody, your first impression, is met in like 10 seconds, and that's largely how you base your opinion on somebody,
Right.
And right, so she has her opinion set on him, even though he is definitely more virtuous than he appears to be. And so she gets to know Keyes through some of Guy's programming, which allows her then to see Keyes in a different light, the actual light, actually. And so that's where I think that's how I read that in the movie.
Okay. I think that's a good explanation.
So I think that there's the movie also, so I think part of it is I'm going to try to persuade Seth that this is maybe a better movie than we think. But so the movie does a couple of things well, I think, where it gives you Guy who's virtually a fish out of water, as he puts the glasses on and he's trying to navigate the world of Grand Theft Auto,
Right.
PG-13 Grand Theft Auto. And that fish out of water really works. It also, you get the nice ticking time bomb of, we know the game is going to be deactivated, so that's got the race against time,
Right.
Which actually does set up some good tension. You got a really quirky villain. I love Taika Waititi in the role.
Yeah.
He just plays such a zany, goofy bad guy who kind of steals every scene he's in. Right? He's hilarious. And right, a lot of it just works really well. A lot of it's funny. Some of the action set pieces are okay, but I think it's the pacing of the movie just fits so well. Like I said, the bombs go off when they need to. Right, they wipe his memory. And it definitely is that Dark Night of the Soul type moment, right when they're shutting everything down. It's that race to get to the finish, and then the ultimate reveal of Ryan Reynolds' opponent, which is so good. And I just the movie just works.
Okay, I must admit, at least for the first half of the movie, there was also the suspense. Well, not suspense, but there's a bit of mystery where we weren't sure what everything was. So they kind of released information in little bits, like, here's the world we're setting you up in. Here's the main character. He's a video game character. And then, okay, well, now we're going to introduce you to the outside world. Okay, so he's inside a game, but we still don't know who he is and his significance.
Right.
And then we start knowing, like, oh, wait, he's special in some way. And then it's all kind of just fed through, just like, the pacing was very good. I agree in that respect. So that there's always something for us to keep, like, engaged. Like,
right.
Okay, now this is happening, and now we're learning more about this and that, and the stakes are set up very well. It's a very, very well written movie. I have to agree with that.
We're slowly introduced to things, like you said, because initially the stake is Guy's trying not to die after putting the glasses on, and that's where Keyes and his fellow programmer jump in there and they try to kill him, and it's all very very fun. But the story isn't too big. That interaction, that action sequence, doesn't feel like it has stakes.
Right.
And so that's good. And then, right, we get to the element to where, okay, well, now it's training montage, right? It's time to get better. And there's also the element to where he's doing good things too, right? Nowadays, getting better in an MMO means, okay, how many, who can I shoot? Who can I kill? Who can I bang? And it becomes like Red Dead Redemption, Cyberpunk 2077. It's like, how bad can you be to gain notoriety? Whereas Free Guy does the opposite. Not only is he like doing good deeds and like smashing bad players, but he's also like encouraging people to be the better version of themselves. Like Buddy, there's that girl in the coffee shop. And it's this really likable, admirable character traits that he's showing that kind of win you over.
Yeah, that's true. And it's funny you mentioned Red Dead Redemption, because that was my favorite game for a while. And you did have the opportunity to be better. And so, but it was tough, man. Not in the way that you were tempted to go out and rob stuff, but the game made it hard on you to make the good decisions.
Yeah, it was so good to be bad.
And while I was playing, man, I tried to make the right decisions. And I was pretty bad by the end. And so it's funny that when I was watching the movie, I had that experience to know, like, oh yeah, it's like, I totally get it, because I played those games and it is very hard to be good.
Yeah.
So the fact that he made those decisions, yeah, it was unique that he chose that, and the video game portion, the world that they set up was so good in that it tied real life video games into it. In like they had to take some liberties so that the story worked well.
Yeah.
But the GTA, some elements of Fortnite, this open world gaming, where they pulled real stuff from real games, I think may have been a little bit of a detriment even.
Okay.
Because when you have things like that, you have to kind of know it to be able to understand the film. And it was bordering on that, where I'm not so sure that a boomer who does not understand Fortnite and GTA would understand this film very well.
That may be true, but it still has an audience. No doubt it has an audience that works.
Yeah, no, it does. It does have an audience, yeah.
And it's always a struggle of how much do you lean into your audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. You carve out your audience, and you're going to catch some of the peripheral people for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But right, we're just going to lean heavy into the audience, and this is where I think this movie starts to go awry in a couple of ways. Because right? Do you call it fan service? Do you call it being self-aware? Because the movie is somewhat self-aware, right? You get this,
very self-aware, yeah. Which is hip nowadays for movies.
Yeah, but I think this movie crossed the line, and I'll explain. So, the Channing Tatum bits, I think it was too much. Like at first it was funny, and then it got out of control.
It went a minute too long.
Yes, or two. Yeah. There was also some funny bits with the celebrity cameos with and I'm going to delineate which ones I'm talking about.
Okay.
There's like the Hugh Jackman, right? He's the shadow guy. And I recognize his voice right away. I know Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. His voice is also he's one of the video game characters.
Okay.
Okay, this is what I don't like, because I think that this is a misstep. So you have Hugh Jackman, you got Dwayne Johnson, and you got some of these other people who are video game characters, right? They're gamers who are now video game avatars interacting in the world with Free Guy and with Millie's character, or Millie. Then you kind of get to where you have YouTubers, streamers, who are on Twitch, who are actual streamers, who are experiencing the game. And then you have like Chris Evans has this cameo where he's watching it live. Like, wait. Okay. You have Taika Waititi, who directed Thor Ragnarok, is the villain of the movie, and you have Chris Evans as himself, who's watching something. And at a certain point, it's like, this is too much. You're trying to, because they're simultaneously trying to create this fantasy world, right? With fantasy. This is a fantasy game. It's a fake game, and fantasy, but it's this fake developing company, video game developing company, and this fake game. Yeah. But then you have this real people who are interacting with it as well, which is kind of weird. And also like Chris Evans, there's also like somebody who's on CNN, and it's like it crosses a line of being
they aren't trying to create too much of the fantasy world. It is somewhat supposed to be grounded in this world. So Chris Evans as himself is a good example, but they do, when they brought in all those streamers and they put it on the news and everything like that, they are trying to ground it into this world. So I understand where you're saying that the fact that Taika Waititi is not playing Taika Waititi makes it weird, and I agree with that. But they are trying to build it into this world a little bit more than just like, oh yeah, this is like a fictional world, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I just wonder if you add those YouTubers in and you're just trying to make a connection, like, oh hey, there's Dan TDM, or hey, there's this person, and you're just trying to make connections with your audience. They actually don't add anything to your story. Does that make sense? I don't know. Maybe it's just me, and I go, yeah. Like having Chris Evans, on the phone is like, there's no, like, do we need a lightsaber? Do we need Captain America's shield? It makes a good moment, but it's entirely outside of the narrative, right? What gives that meaning is our knowledge of pop culture, not the actual items to Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, I know it's a little bit early to go into our best and worst, but actually,
all right, let's do it.
Chris Evans's cameo was my best.
Okay,
it was a genuine laugh when I saw that. Like, I don't like when movies do those little quips like the lightsaber. I didn't really like that. It's kind of I think the Lego Movie did that. Remember when the Millennium Falcon showed up?
Okay.
And the Lego Movie had a lot of those cameos because the Lego has their strands and everything. Harry Potter and whatnot.
But that movie literally is an advertisement for Legos, so
Right.
I think you can kind of forgive that, right?
Speaking of which, this is also a rabbit hole, but this movie draws a lot from the Lego Movie.
Oh, really?
The morning routine with Ryan Reynolds.
Oh, yeah.
I was thinking Lego Movie right there. That the normal guy being drawn into this crazy world of lasers and guns and stuff when he chases after the girl of his dreams.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So, Chris Evans was my best. But yeah, I see what you're saying with the pop culture references. And actually, I would like to give this movie the Gone with the Wind award for being, for its inevitable inability to age well. 40 years from now, artificial intelligence will be actually real. Video games will be vastly different in unimaginable ways, and this movie will be completely obsolete. That's my other thing with this movie. My other issue with this movie, I don't see it aging well at all.
You think we're not going to be talking about this in 10 years?
40.
Okay, all right.
Because Fortnite and modern video games, they'll go on for another 10 years, but there is going to be a new technology in video games. It's already coming. It's the VR. Yeah. I don't know if that's going to completely catch on because it's kind of completely different from how modern gaming is and is set up, but gaming will take leaps and bounds in the next 2 or 3 decades. And then no one's going to have those cultural links to this film.
Yeah.
Because it's a crutch for the film, like you're pointing out.
Yes.
So,
which I think is similar with, right, you think about Tron, the original Tron that came out in like the 70s.
Yeah.
And that movie does not age well. And similar...
the CGI, right?
The CGI, even the story. So, but if your movie is, and same thing with Avatar, if your movie is propelled by technology, 3D or new computer graphics, and the story lags behind, you're asking to be seen as a fossil later on.
Yeah.
Because nobody talks about Avatar today, even though it made oodles of money at the time. But,
right. Yeah. It came into the spotlight when the Avengers were coming out, but that's it.
Yeah, well, it was
just because the Avengers was going to break the record.
Yeah,
Avatar's record.
right. That's why people were talking about it, right?
Yeah, that was it.
And after that, I think it's over. People are not going to talk about it, except if 3D comes back into the theater lexicon again.
It's been years since I've seen Avatar. Has it really aged that poorly?
Oh, I think so. I think if you watch it, you're going to be somewhat impressed with the computer graphics, maybe, but I don't think you're going to be anyone's wowed by the story. I don't think anyone ever was. It's this technological phenomenon.
Right. Huh.
And so you might be true with this movie, where it's like the people, it's going to resonate with people at this time because people are going to know who Dan TDM is right now. And in 20 years, when Dan TDM is still playing Minecraft, it's not going to work. The audience is going to have moved on. You have the new audience come in, and maybe this movie does have a little bit of a shelf life, and that's why that's why I'm not calling this movie a masterpiece. Right. I think it's a lot of fun, but like you're saying, it may have a shelf life.
Well, in GTA has a shelf life. I think it's already fading out. Call of Duty, I think, is vastly more popular nowadays. Yeah. Fortnite is even starting to fade away a little bit, I think. Of course, I'm not that fad, but I'm pretty sure those things are kind of fading out. And so,
as does everything that is a fad.
Right. Right.
There are some things that are gonna stick, with us. We can point to popular video games. Right? How many people still rave about The Witcher 3, or they're still raving about Half-Life, or they're still raving about some game that transcended trends and are held up as masterpieces for whatever reason, as opposed to culturally sensitive and but ultimately sort of fueled entirely by intertextuality, where you'll have to know what the in thing is to appreciate what you're watching.
Right, exactly. I think of a movie that has a similar premise, Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah.
That centers around video games. You'll be able to watch Wreck-It Ralph 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and you'll still at least be able to follow the movie pretty well and not need to know any of the cultural references.
Yes, because there aren't that many of them.
No, there's especially the first one. It's
Yeah.
everyone will remember retro video games in the old consoles, and part of the story is that they are fading out of existence and being replaced by newer games. That's part of the movie, and the story arc, Wreck-It Ralph not wanting to be the bad guy. So much of it is just like a normal animated movie. It doesn't lean on you having to know all of these different, and they invent their own video games and stuff like that. And so I see that movie as being a difference with this, where this movie relies so heavily on you knowing being fad in order to enjoy the movie.
Yes, yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah.
So that's another reason. That's another notch. This movie is not as great.
I had to admit my efforts to convince you that this is a really good movie are not that successful, apparently.
You're helping me.
I know. All right, I'm going to talk about my best then. Maybe this will get us back on the
Okay.
this is a good movie track. Is right when they put in the boss program. You know, when Ryan Reynolds is, when Guy is almost to the edge of the world, and they beam down the dude.
Yeah, dude.
and watching it, I was like, oh, what celebrity cameo are they gonna shoehorn in here? And then it's just Ryan Reynolds on this wrestler's face. It's hilarious. It was very unexpected and very good. Like, I thought that was really expertly done. I thought so. Kudos to the filmmakers, because I think they subverted the expectations in a really good way.
Yeah. Good little comedy bit. I thought it was kind of dumb.
All right. Okay, what's your worst for the movie? Is that your worst?
No.
Ryan Reynolds face on a wrestler's body.
No, my worst was the ending of the film. Gosh, it was Lord of the Rings: Return of the King long. They made it to the island, and the movie could have ended there, and we all would have known what had kind of happened. But then they got there. I think wasn't Taika Waititi. His new game release sucked. And then did he end up getting like arrested for stealing the game? So he ended up getting arrested. So there was all that karma, and then I think they went back to the game for a little bit, and then they went back to Keys and Millie and their whole relationship thingy, and then it goes back into the game, and it kind of has to resolve Guy's character, even though it's a video game and we don't care.
Yeah. Okay.
And while it's in my mind, I hated the ending where they turned the video game that was kind of awesome, that I probably would play if it was a real game, into a game you watch. Nobody will play a video game that you watch. Like, I understand the YouTube thing where everyone's like, you're just watching a video game, it's not that cool. It's like, well, people watch it and then they go play it.
Yeah, exactly. I think people watch playthroughs to see if their experience, to see how someone else experiences the thing you just experienced, right?
And to get tips and
yeah, for sure. But
measure your skill level against the top gamers and
sure. But when you're a celebrity gamer, that's not why people are. They're not watching it for tips. They're watching to see how they experience. How a celebrity does.
They make it fun. Yeah.
Okay, but I'm going to agree with you about the ending, but just the very end scene. I think it just dragged too long, and it felt like they dragged it on just so they could bring back Buddy. Like, they didn't have to have that drawn-out sequence where they brought him back.
Who's
Buddy? Buddy's the cop, the police officer.
Oh, yeah, his friend from the beginning.
Right.
No one ever cared about him.
Yeah, I mean, he's fine. The character design for Buddy is... All Buddy does is basically he's a receptacle for Ryan Reynolds to tell him how he feels. Yeah. And Buddy he gives Ryan Reynolds one bit of wisdom, so he's not as much of a jerk. But basically he almost gives nothing back to the story. And so me seeing him at the end, like if we didn't see him, I would almost not have cared at all.
I definitely wouldn't have. Yeah.
I much would have preferred if the movie would have ended with the romance, being concluded. They fall in love. That's it.
That would have been a fine.
And maybe you have one more shot of Ryan Reynolds having a good time, because you are absolutely right. I wrote down here what the video game is called. Free Life. Yeah. That sounds so boring. Like, no.
And what they were setting up was a utopia.
Yeah.
Like a Sim City kind of.
Yeah, right. No one's gonna be playing that in 5 minutes. That's obsolete. That's going away right away.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm glad you agree with me in that regard. And that guy Buddy, he disappeared for half the movie, and he came back. And when he comes back, he's always kind of that what are you doing, guy? This is not you. We're supposed to be NPCs. We're not supposed to be doing all this. And then at the very end, he kind of wakes up, and then he's on Guy's side, and they're on their way to the island, and he's like, no, you go on without me. I'm just an NPC or whatever, and it's okay if I'll come back. And so, like, he goes into the abyss or whatever, and yeah, it's not necessary at all.
Yeah, I think they overplayed his importance a little bit.
They could have even left him out of that area.
Yeah, I think that's true. They could have just had him be as one of the crowd members at the end, and that would have been fine. I don't know that he, like I said, he doesn't add anything. You know, once they're sprinting towards the end, and he doesn't really help fight the dude anyway. So it's like, you know, it would have been fine.
I was yelling at the screen. I was like, keep going, go, don't stop, go. It's all ending. All right. Nathaniel, what was your worst of the film?
Okay, so...
Oh, now wait. You had a big thing that you were going to dump all over the film on, right?
Yeah, so...
Have at it.
Okay. So this film only had a little bit of wokeness. I had a little bit of wokeness here or there. Didn't really bother me too much. You know, someone makes a crack about white privilege or whatever. That was
funny. It was a funny joke.
Yeah, whatever. Okay. So, they're towards the end of the movie, they're talking to all the citizens of Free City. Mm-hmm. And you know, Ryan Reynolds is talking to Millie, and he's like, Millie, are there any bank robberies in your world? She's like, nope, like no bank robberies. Is there are there any like corpses everywhere? Like nope, there's like no corpses. What about gun violence? There's no gun violence there. And she's like, yep, there's gun violence. It's a real problem. Okay, so and this is my issue with that is I think it promotes a narrative. And that's what it is. It's a narrative. Because you have to make a crack like that, you have to make sure it's fact-based. Because I'm pretty sure, just like you and I don't see corpses in the street, I'm not sure that we see gun violence everywhere, you know?
Yeah, not to the scale that it was in Free City.
Yeah, exactly. and so, especially as a comparison, that works. So, but I dove into the stats. And this might get a little dark, so I apologize ahead of the time, so you can skip ahead. So,
dark in the real life?
Yeah, dark in the real life. Okay.
Okay.
So I looked up ABC News. So ABC News is not known for being a bastion for conservative thought. So
no. Okay.
About the past year or so, we're looking at like 20,000 deaths from gun violence and about 40,000 injuries, which. That's not good. That's bad, right?
Yeah,
no question there. Okay, so this is what I did not know and kind of surprised me. Did you know that 60% of that 20,000, so gun deaths, is caused by suicide?
Really?
Kind of surprised me.
60% of okay.
And
wow.
that's a large number.
Oh,
and so you're talking about that gun violence is almost completely isolated from the general population, right? Because when she's talking about gun violence everywhere, you're talking about like a mass shooter situation. When she's talking about gun violence everywhere, like it's a big problem.
Yeah.
Like okay, I agree it's a problem, but you like that's what you focus on. You don't focus on like corpses in the street, which there aren't any, but like people still die here.
Yeah.
And, like that's a problem.
Yeah.
And then so just getting back to some other things, they talk about like maybe $1 billion. Gets spent on healthcare treating gunshot wounds every year.
$1 billion?
Yeah, $1 billion.
Okay.
Like that's not great, you know. Like, but if you look at just like the opioids, there's like 11 billion annually goes to like treating opioid people. And I want to read you one more thing from this ABC News article because it talks about this Dr. Benjamin, who's like an executive director at the American Public Health Association, and he talks about gun violence goes beyond the killings and even crime. And it's like, it's seeped into every aspect of American culture, from active shooter drills in schools and offices to the numbing feeling many people have that they could be shot at any moment. All right. So did you know that of like the gun violence, like less than 1% is like mass shootings and like active shooter situations. And so I wonder if, you have people who, even if they feel like they could be shot at any moment, is that just totally made up statistically?
Maybe not if you live in an inner city like Chicago.
That's fine. But if you are a Hollywood writer, and you're in Hollywood and you're trying to write something that people are going to identify with, and there's definitely some part of the country, right, disproportionately affected by gun violence,
right? Yeah.
Chicago. like tons of gun control in Chicago, right? In Portland, Seattle, LA, New York, lots of heavy gun control. Like if you're a Hollywood writer, the person who knows the most about has most experience with gun control is definitely Alec Baldwin. Right?
Oh no, you had to go there.
And so it's like this is you knock a straw man down in your movie. That's totally unnecessary. That's definitely my worst of the movie. No.
I agree with your point in that it's important to have context, and a sense of scale as far as importance for issues goes. And I think, like you well pointed out, opioids are a much bigger issue than guns are. And so I agree. Guns, like the whole gun debate is a little bit conflated, and the way that you run numbers. And, like I'm sure the story that you were looking at, it wasn't even bringing up the fact that guns are important because they protect people also, and they protect a vastly more amount, a lot more people than end up getting hurt by guns. And so, it's not to say that guns aren't an issue either, that there are still, school shootings.
Yeah.
There's definitely issues inside of inner cities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gang violence and such. It's been getting worse where we are too.
Yeah, but I think part of the issue is, all right, is that really the most important issue that we need to be focusing on? Is that the issue we need? Like I feel like that's an easy issue to demonize.
Yeah.
And you ignore other problems. Like, what are the other sources of crime and violence that maybe we should be looking into and seeing? And no one wants to talk about some of those issues.
Yeah.
Well, let's just pick on the NRA and gun manufacturers.
Maybe so, but it was such a tiny line. I can't say that the movie was taking aim at one side or the other.
Pun.
Yeah. I kind of walked it. I didn't even see that coming. But yeah, I don't think that they were taking aim at it. I think it was just kind of just a little... It was such a small one-liner. I kind of just waved it off. And I see what you're saying, that it seems like it's drawing a bigger attention to that than it seems. But it's kind of in line with the movie, where the movie obviously wasn't going to go off and start talking about, drugs or like, you don't see a lot of people dying because of heart condition. Right, because they're video game characters. like that wasn't going to be brought up. The fact that there was a lot of, like, there's just constant 24/7 gun violence inside of Free City. Guy is trying to list off ways that the sim world is not the same as the real world.
Yeah.
And he listed that. And I could see Millie as being a girl who's kind of, she goes to the coffee houses, and she might be kind of political every now and then. and for her to say, no, you know what? That does get hotly debated. And so, yeah, it is kind of a bit of an issue. And they kind of left it there. Yeah. They didn't say or delve into that anymore. They just said, oh, yeah, it's an issue.
Yeah. I agree that the line is a little funny.
Yeah.
It just bothers me because I don't think that's an accurate representation of that issue.
Fair enough. And I agree. In the respect that Free City, nowhere near as bad as real life.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, same with like GTA, and thank goodness we are not like Red Dead.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man. So another thing that I just getting away from my worst of the movie. There's a couple of things that I did enjoy. I kind of like you mentioned, like, the karma that got Taika Waititi. So Millie and him have this conversation at the end of it, and it appears that the villain is going to get part of his way. And that's what I liked, right? They have this conversation, and it seems like, oh, well, he's not going to get the full punishment that he deserves. And she's kind of getting ripped off by him. But it's one of those good storytelling techniques where sometimes you give the villain what they want, and that thing is going to fuel their downfall, right? It's not that we need the good guys to kick the villain's butt and sock it to him.
Yeah.
It's that there's an ending to evil ways and bad decisions that kind of has a way of coming back on itself.
Yeah. And I thought that gave Millie's sense of, like, her value. Like, the value of Guy and Free City had a very high value for Millie.
Yeah.
And so when she's willing to sacrifice all of that just so that she can have that, You know,
Yeah, even her chance at revenge.
right? Yeah. So even if Taika Waititi's character, even if he took that and was successful and did not have the downfall, it's still a good ending because she got what was valuable to her.
Right.
And so as an audience, you know, as a viewer, you understand like, oh, this is very important. It gave it more value, I would say. Yeah, I like that.
One other thing that I will comment that I did like, I don't love Mariah Carey's fantasy, whatever. It's the song. The song is whatever. But I thought that the filmmakers really smart, and like they had that tune going off several times in the movie without actually playing the whole song until the very end, and it reminded me a little bit. And I know Free Guy and Inception probably shouldn't be mentioned in the same sentence, but you know, there's a lot of times in Inception where he's looking at his kids, and you never see their faces. They're always shot from the back, and at the very end you actually see their faces and they turn towards him, and it's this nice payoff where even if I don't like the song, when it finally comes in the very end, it's like, okay, this is it feels like they were kind of teasing us the entire time with that this is significant, and then here's the whole thing, movie is over. It's a nice way to with the ear to kind of help the movie conclude as well. So gotta give props to the filmmakers for that as well.
Okay, just little subtle stuff.
Yeah,
Nice. Okay. All right. Well, do you have any other notes on Free Guy?
I think this movie's okay, but not everybody feels that way. Believe it or not,
I have a tough time believing that.
Julian,
Julian, King Julian.
on Rotten Tomatoes, definitely poo-pooed the movie. He gave the movie 1 star. Quote: "It was super boring. I fell asleep watching it, and I've never fallen asleep during a movie."
I wonder what Julian watches on a daily basis.
Exactly. Like, oh man, he's never watched a Godfather movie. He's probably never even watched like Avengers Endgame. He probably would have
Yeah. Wow. Some people on Rotten Tomatoes. So was he a certified reviewer?
No. So this is just a user of Rotten Tomatoes who's just voicing his opinion for the people to have.
Okay, good for him.
Yeah.
Way to get out there.
Yeah, exactly.
I also went to Rotten Tomatoes this time, but I picked a review by Jake Wilson. He is a certified Rotten Tomatoes top critic.
Oh, okay. So this is. I feel like this is the Michelangelo of review. Okay, all right.
Oh yeah. And he also writes for The Age, an Australian news site. And he had some deep thoughts. He gave it 3 out of 5. So prepare to get. This is going to get real deep.
Okay.
On a theological level, we are offered a not totally irrational vision of God in the character of Keyes, a coding-obsessed geek who does his best to work in tandem with his female equivalent. Politically, NPCs like Guy can be taken to represent the bulk of humanity, treated by the rich and powerful as little more than a background decor. Arousing enough populist sentiment, though also not a wholly flattering revelation of how Hollywood thinks about the likes of you and me. Complicating matters are hints of reactionary subtext along the lines of straight white middle-class guys are now the real underdogs. As in the curious interlude when the hero is chased by a pink bunny and a cop in a mustache out of the village people, protesting all the while he doesn't understand what he's done wrong. On top of this is a certain self-referential logic. In effect, being part of a video game that keeps rebooting means watching the same story play out over and over. Let's face it, that's a reasonable way of describing the most contemporary Hollywood cinema. Man.
Well, props for his deep thoughts.
So watch it now, enjoy it while it's hot, enjoy it while it's fad. All right, and so until next time.
I'm Nathaniel.
And I'm Seth.
And this has been The Fad Dads.